Look like a biker gang.
Softest looking biker gang there ever was.
Yeah, a very nice biker gang.
Pleasant. We do. We're like the Shiners. You know, we do the little go kart thing, but we do it with our bikes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Uh,
we're a biker gang, but our bikes are Huffies.
yes. Welcome back, everybody. We are back. So the JUCO ruling has just come out. Um, so as I had first understood it, is that it was a blanket ruling, like passed by a judge. Was how my first initial when I first heard about it. I didn't do any looking into it. I was like, oh, it's a blanket ruling. Everyone in
Hmm.
JUCO gets more time.
That's
That
how it
is
was reported. I
correct.
mean, it
It's
was
not
just
the
kind of
case.
like,
Not
yeah.
the case at all. Which now this makes way more sense. So
Hmm.
I went in and did a little bit more digging because we started having a lot of guys asking questions, and realistically, it could change the landscape of college athletics and even pro athletics. Like, especially there were a couple articles I read on like MLB forecasting how they would draft or if they would or wouldn't draft. So, regardless, basically this came about. There's a guy. I'll just give you guys a skinny. There's a guy at Vanderbilt. Played at a JUCO for 2 years. Went to New Mexico State and then transferred to Vanderbilt. So he's technically in his third year of NCAA eligibility, which would be his last. The rule in the NCAA is that you have four competitive years in five. 4 and 5 is the rule, right?
5 years to compete 4 seasons.
Correct. That is the rule without having to do an appeal for like a medical red shirt or like extenuating circumstances. So you'd have to go to court to do all those things. But basically, so this is a solo ruling in the case of this Pavia dude. He got granted this ruling by a judge in Tennessee because of the NIL, because of how NIL works now. So what he granted the ruling on was because of the uncompetitive nature and the limiting of like basically the limiting of the free market in the United States. So that like you have an opportunity to make money, you can't limit someone's opportunity to make money based upon rules that do not apply to the situation. So they granted him a waiver to play one more year. There have been like three guys at Eastern Washington that have been granted a waiver to play an additional year. Now, this waiver only covers the 25 this upcoming season, and it's
The
only for these.
2025-2026 season.
Yep, and it's only for these players, and it's only at these universities. So, if there are others, they all need to go and appeal. Now, the judge made it pretty definitive that he was like, "This is a very easy like, yeah, they should be able to play based upon how the NCAA is operating nowadays." He was like, you know, the way that we're moving forward in NIL, like the money part of it is what changes, right? So when you couldn't make any money, it didn't really matter because you're not the only thing you're limiting is their ability to compete against other amateurs. Changes the game. With NIL money, you're literally stepping in the way of someone like making a living. So the NCAA, is saying that you can't make money, which then is like you can't do that. It's uncompetitive. Like you can't. There's no way you can like limit someone's ability just because you feel like they've used their time.
Right.
So this changes things because I was like, oh, so now every JUCO dude can just go back and play or do whatever they want to do, or there's no rules. And so it was good to get some
Yeah.
clarity because we have a
We
lot
were,
of
we
guys
were
that were getting
discussing it
scared.
like we said junior college was going to turn into junior hockey.
Mm.
Like it was going to be everybody does it. 2 years, all college freshmen are going to be 21 years old.
Yep.
But yeah, so as you said, there was a statement from the NJCAA, the National Junior College, that came out to yesterday. Yeah, I think yesterday. Um, it says this is currently a temporary waiver that only applies to those student athletes that meet the stated criteria to compete in 2025-2026.
Mm.
And it says if those student athletes would have otherwise used their final season of competition during the 2024-2025 academic year and meet all of the other requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially, it's only for people who are in their last year.
Mm.
It's only for this season. It's a temporary waiver. Now, what's interesting, though, is in order for us to get here, Diego Pavia had to actually sue the NCAA. Like he filed a legitimate lawsuit. That's why there's a judge that's involved. It was an actual court case lawsuit, and he was claiming whatever he was claiming, discrimination. I don't know.
Yeah, it was what the terminology was. It was like I said, it comes down to the fact that they were standing in the way of him making money. NCAA
Yeah,
was
right.
his livelihood was threatened
Yeah.
or endangered
And
because
he
the NCAA.
and he was arguing that you don't have the same earning potential in junior college. So
Correct.
he should be allowed 4 years of earning potential because
Mhm.
he's like not an NFL prospect or whatever. So he's saying like, this is my chance to make money at this thing,
Mhm.
and I should be allowed 4 years of earning potential. So it sets an interesting precedent because what could happen is you could have thousands and thousands of athletes going and filing some kind of appeal with the NCAA and getting that year back. And there's this precedent that's been set. So essentially, we'll have another COVID year where
Mhm.
tons of athletes will get an extra year that they would not have gotten otherwise. Or they might draw the line at the like income generating sports where with football and men's basketball, and they might tell baseball players and fast pitch softball players and Division II college volleyball players that like this doesn't apply to you because you're not going to make big NIL deals in your Division III swimming and diving team. So it's an interesting sort of situation for a lot of people. And I mean, and there are like in the case of fast pitch softball, there was a NCAA pitcher. Let me do a quick Google here and fact check this. There was an NCAA fast pitch softball pitcher. NIL deal that I believe it was $1 million. Yeah.
What?
Kennedy. I don't know how to pronounce her first name, but she was the player from Stanford. I think she's a pitcher.
Mhm.
And she was the USA Softball Collegiate Player of the Year. Stanford went to the College World Series semifinals. Not Najari. I don't know.
Oof.
It's spelled Nijaree. Kennedy, and she signed a NIL deal with Texas Tech for $1 million, $1,050,000. And so she entered the transfer portal because she's the biggest name in college softball, and she was like, "I know I can make money." So this report says 1.2 million for a year.
That's so much.
So fast pitch softball is growing fast, and I think you're going to see some outliers in fast pitch softball and in college baseball. The Paul Skeens types of the world are going to get $1 million deals, but there's going to be a really big gap between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to baseball and softball.
Right.
And so that it sets a weird precedent with and even let's use Paul Skeens as an example. Even a Paul Skeens could potentially make an argument that his earning potential at Air Force was not the same as it was at LSU.
Okay.
So like,
yeah,
we could start filing appeals and
mm-hmm.
arguing semantics and like it's a really weird situation, and it's kind of fluid. Everybody kind of lost their shit last week or when this news first broke, and they're like, "Oh my God, did everybody just get 2 years of eligibility back?"
Mm-hmm.
Not what happened. But it did do, like I said, it did do the COVID year thing where like college sports is supposed to kind of be this conveyor belt, right? You're in it for a certain amount of time and then you're out, and that makes room for the new people to then enter.
Come in.
Yeah. Right? Like it's and the conveyor belt keeps extending, and it's creating real problems for high school kids. And then the transfer portal is really causing more of those problems because we have college baseball coaches right now that are telling us they're not even recruiting high school kids for position players. They're only going to the portal.
So there's like, let me finish a thought on this junior college. Like, so one of the other things that was cited by this judge is that you do not penalize those who played at prep academies, who compete against junior colleges.
So the IMGs of the world?
Yeah. So that precedent also exists, right? So you don't penalize kids further because they went to a prep academy. So he was you could argue that the junior college route is essentially the same level of play because you're playing junior colleges, like that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you definitely can't argue that.
Yep. And it was a very clear, concise, like this, there's precedent set. Good job, John. The cattail. Yep. But the big thing that I think is going to make a problem for like when we look at the MLB, right? So like in baseball, after you complete when you're at a junior college, you're technically able to be drafted any year after you've competed at a junior college in college baseball. Okay.
Yep.
So like let's say a guy comes out of high school and he has a big like draft deal, a relatively big draft deal for a high school kid. You could sign for 6 figures. Okay. That's a pretty good bonus for a high school draft pick, unless you're like a top 4. Like if you get drafted out of high school and you got 6 figures, you're a good player. Let's say he goes to a power 4. He's not going to start at a power 4. Red shirts goes to a JUCO. Now, from when his clock starts at that JUCO, he is draft eligible for the next 6 years. So he could build this like linear progression. Let's say he takes 2 years at JUCO, does really well, goes to a power 4, has a killer first year, killer second year. He doesn't have to wait until his second year or after his third year. Whenever that normal clock was, he could get right after his first year. He could go when your stock's the highest versus like so. You hear of guys all the time that'll come out and they'll be like freshman All-Americans at whatever power 4, but you can't draft them yet because they're not eligible because of how it works. So this like changing that time clock as far as like the ability to use that to drive up your stock is great, but it does present the fact that when we look at high school players, like I don't think the amount of guys going to Division 1s, like relatively higher level Division 1s from high school, I think is going to go down drastically. Like a lot.
Yeah.
Because
that was already occurring, I think.
Right. I think it's going to go even more. Like I think we're going to have a lot of guys, like a lot of guys. I was just talking about this with one of the Mikalakis brothers. They came in, they saw me, and he's like, "Dude, we picked up a guy from Wisconsin Whitewater. He was at a D3 for 2 years, and now he's at a Power 4, Power 5. He's at a huge school, but it's like there's no room if you're just coming out of if you're just using the transfer portal, and you're really just using like high level JUCO, like your funnel from a JUCO, whoever you're partnered with. There's no reason if you're going to compete at that high of a level to take an 18-year-old unless they're a stud, like unless they're that guy. And even then, you could have like a more competent guy that you're not going to have to draft, like give NIL money to. You could just pull up a dude on a transfer portal who's just looking to get looks at a higher level school so he can get drafted. Like it's going to change the way. Not that the junior college ruling really has that, but like as we trend more towards this, like we're just going to be very few guys that go to high level D1s. Like it's going to be mid-major D1s at the highest end, and then tons of D2. Like D2 baseball is going to get really good. Like the lower
because people are going to use D2s like junior colleges. Yep. Whether the coaches like it or not, that's what's going to happen, and that's going to make it very competitive because people are going to be trying. They're going to be guys who are bubble D1 guys. They're going to be trying to put a resume together so that they can transfer. Here's something I don't fully understand. This statement from junior college and JCAA says that it's a temporary waiver that only applies to the 2025-2026 season. But I don't understand how you can do that. I don't really get how you can say this is a temporary thing because you're setting a precedent. So like if I'm a high school senior right now and I'm going to go to a junior college, if I see this, I'm planning on 6 years now.
Oh yeah.
What I don't like. I don't get how you can say this is temporary, only applying to one season, because now every single kid who's going to go the JUCO route is going to want those 4 years. Not only for NIL stuff, but also you can get a scholarship and then get your master's degree. I mean, there's an academic benefit to this as well. I was lucky enough to do 5. I had a medical red shirt, and I was ahead because of this and that. So I got my master's degree during the course of the time I was playing college baseball. Super convenient, really advantageous for me in my life, my career, to be able to just get it done all at once while I was a full-time student anyway, just living the college kid life. If I'm a normal everyday person and I'm going to need 6 to do that, why would I not want to do JUCO, 4 years of college baseball, NCAA college baseball, 2 years of undergrad, 2 years of grad school, MBA, I'm out. I've got my consulting job or whatever the hell, right? I'm working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car because they hire
they give
college
you the
athletes or whatever.
To be
I know Northwestern Mutual.
Yep. I totally agree. So you and I talked about this the other day. I was like, in my path, like if this had existed when I was coming through, and I would have known, like I could have planned for 6 years, like right out the gate, and even 7. Like let's say I would have taken, 2 years of JUCO, come into a D1, take a red shirt, in 7 years, I'm basically done with a doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could have went like the orthopedic surge route or the pre-med route and gotten like most of a doctorate done while
Yep.
playing a sport, getting some subsidy from a school. Like it can be a huge advantage, I think, like for especially if you're going to school and you're actually like you have goals of not just playing the sport at a high level, but also like having a high level degree, and you can find a way to roll that into your package. I think it's going to make it much more accessible to people, but at the same time, I don't know. I think there's a reason it's called amateur sport, or it was amateur sport. Like the quality of the game, I don't know if it'll go up that much overall. I think at the higher levels, the quality is going to go up because you're going to have like very mature adults playing a sport. Like I didn't
Yeah.
get really good at baseball until I was like 25, 26. Like I didn't make big jumps and things until I was 25, 26. And it's like, if I could have been competing when I was 24, like 23,
Mm-hmm.
24, I could have been like trending up. Who knows? Maybe I would have finished the doctorate and then when like, you know what? I might go play pro a little bit, see how it
Yeah.
goes. But I don't think the other part I think is I don't think we'll see a lot of like 20-year careers. Like, we don't see long-term major league careers anymore or pro
Yeah.
careers
We're
because
gonna
guys are getting in the
see
league so much later.
probably even it's only going to be Latin players who have 20-year careers now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who's the last American teenager to make their major league debut? Was
Is Holiday
was Holiday a teenager still when he made his debut? Was he 19?
But he's one of 3 or 2. It's not like there aren't 8 dudes across the MLB who are 19 or whatever.
Yeah,
playing.
I suppose it's rare in general. In fairness,
is.
right?
It is.
The last teenager to make their debut prior to that, American teenager that I can think of, was probably Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
Prior to that, Ken Griffey Jr.
Well, there's been a couple of pitchers that have been really young too, but they're not guys that have stuck around. Like they're not guys that we are still talking about. So
Right.
I don't know. I think it's going to be a good thing overall in the sense that it's going to give guys more time, especially in the game of baseball. Like in football, I don't know if it makes as much of a difference because I don't have any experience. But in the game of baseball, guys don't get really good at the game until they get older
Mm-hmm.
because the game gets so fast that you have to get mature enough to slow it down. And then you have to get mature enough to understand what you are and aren't capable of. And when you're 18, you can't even walk and chew gum half the time. Like you can't even conceptualize like putting everything you need in your backpack that day, much less go out and compete against a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, we're kind of just discussing baseball because it's what we know the best. But
Right.
I follow college football relatively closely as a fan, as a fan of just athletics in general. I think the precedent here for football is really interesting because junior college football is not, as far as I know, not nearly as big as junior college baseball. It's not
Correct.
as common of a route.
Mhm.
JUCO football is generally for guys that didn't have the grades rather than guys who just didn't quite get recruited by who they wanted to.
I think it also
at least
depends
that's
on
my perception of it. I don't know if that's fully accurate.
It depends on the region. So like West Coast JUCO football is a lot bigger. I think East Coast it is as well. Like the Midwest, it's not. It's really
it's not.
Midwest.
It's not big here. And so, but what's really interesting is like with college football, the fact that these guys can make so much money now, guys are going to stick around as long as they possibly can.
Well, yeah,
because there is that middle tier, sort of like upper middle tier of college football player that they're not going to play in the NFL and they know it, but they're a big name in college and they're going to want to hang out of that as long as they possibly can, as old as they possibly can, so that they can be really good, like you were just saying.
Mm-hmm.
If I could be 25 years old playing college football, that's very advantageous for me versus being like 19 and trying to be competitive. I'm an adult man now, and I'm tougher, I'm smarter, I'm more developed, right? Like I'm more mature.
Sorry, I'm
that
putting
whole
some stats together.
That whole landscape is going to be fascinating. You see there's a ripple still of the COVID year going on right now in college football. There's one guy, who has like 9.
Yeah,
He's at
did
his
you see that this
season.
morning? Yeah, Miami's
University
tight
of
end.
Miami player.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something crazy. It was like medical red shirt, or it was like regular red shirt, medical red shirt, medical red shirt, medical red shirt, and then he finally started playing. He like had
and a COVID
some
year in there.
Yeah. And a COVID year in there. He had some really bad luck with like knee injuries or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that guy's not going to play in the NFL.
No.
You know, so like that's it for him. So now he's got to move on, and now he's like 28 years old. He's legitimately almost my age. I'm 29.
That's crazy.
Isn't that insane?
That's crazy. I just looked up the stats on it, so I 100% agree. So the other part that we got to realize about NCAA sport and Division I football is there's just more players. There are more opportunities because Division I football, there are more spots, right? So even if you look at like a mid-major program that is part of like NIL stuff, like let's say, who would be a good example? Let's say NDSU, a very good mid-major. You know, they win a lot of games. They're that whatever kind of level, right? They could start offering NIL money. Mm-hmm. I guarantee there's a bunch of rich farmers in North Dakota that would be like, hey, I can watch NDSU play with better players. Let me invest in them.
Absolutely. So I will push back on that just a little, though, because there's more spots. There's more roster spots. Mm-hmm. However, the position groups in football are so specialized that it kind of evens out in a sense, because if you're like an offensive lineman, you're not going to go and play wide receiver. Like there's no switching positions. Whereas in a sport like baseball, you could be a shortstop and then go play outfield somewhere or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. But the position groups in football are so specialized that despite the fact that there's 85, 100 guys on a roster, whatever, in your position group, it's really there's 20 spots on a team in each position group, I guess.
That's a good point. I'm just saying in general, the opportunity is relatively higher because if you are a good offensive lineman, I was a good offensive lineman. What I do know about football. You can play, like if you're skilled and you have the size, you can play all across the ball all the way. So not just minus tight end, right? Yeah. Same thing like receiver, you can play from slot all the way out to wide receiver if you're very skilled.
Right.
Same thing like a secondary player. Like there is flexibility, but it's not flexibility like baseball. 100% agree. Now, with that being said, there's 190,000 Division I football players.
Wait, what? 190,000?
That's what I just looked up. Let me confirm. That was also the. There are about 190,000 student athletes competing in the Division I college football.
So 100 per team times.
That's a lot.
That doesn't add up. That's like 1,000 teams. Hold on.
There are about 125 Division I programs.
125 times 100 players per roster
would be 12,000 some odd.
12,000.
Yeah.
I don't see how you get to almost 200,000.
This is the AI. Sorry guys. Apologies. That's
incorrect. That's not adding up.
Yep.
19,000. Okay. I believe 19,000.
Let's call it 13,000 just for the sake of the argument. Let's call it 13,000, okay?
13,000.
So that would make sense. If there were 100 per team, counting red shirts, whatever, right? There are 1,600 NFL spots.
Yeah.
So the funnel gets significantly steeper. Like it is way tighter. So that's like if you're a college dude and you got a chance to play a little longer and you may or may not make some money. And also the average length of an NFL career is 3.3 years.
Yeah.
You could play almost triple that in college if this goes the way it's going to go. So it makes a lot of sense if you're thinking like you said, a good example is our buddy Will Rattel, friend of the program. Mm-hmm. He was
recurring guest, not a recurring guest yet.
He will be. He'll come back. He is a guy who was a fantastic mid-major D1 player, like fantastic. Mm-hmm. Went and played a little bit in the NFL, and then played in the Canadian Football League. If Will Rattel would have gotten 2 more years and he could have bartered with Rydell Chevrolet of Grand Forks to get some NIL money, like I guarantee that could happen. Like I think that is the part that in football, the ability to actually make some money before you maybe can make it 3 years in the NFL, that's way better. I would argue. Because people
really do underestimate how big even small colleges are in these like college towns. I have a good friend who played Division II college basketball, and he was on Northwest Missouri State, and they were a top team. They won the national championship while he was there. He was an All-American. He was like the top player on their team.
Yeah.
Small college town. That bastard never bought a drink in that town ever.
Doesn't surprise me.
We went and visited him one time, and oh my God, these old head guys, like in the type that are regulars at your local dive bar, they would see him, recognize him, buy him rounds of beers, like, oh Joey, oh nice game last night, you really took it to him. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I play Division II sports.
Yeah, not like that you did.
Well, nobody cares. Nobody cares about me. What the hell?
Mm-hmm.
But I play Division II sports in like a city. Nobody cares in St. Paul. So the small town, like, local guy, big fan, there is a lot more of that in these towns than you realize, and there's a lot of dudes that can make a legitimate like living, or at the very least pay for the rest of their school if they're not on a full ride scholarship because of the local car dealership guy. Exactly. Or whatever it is.
Yep, 100%. I just looked up, so then the argument, obviously you can make this across any sport, right? But the average professional baseball career, like if you get drafted and you stay in it, is almost 6 years. So it's double the amount of time, just because it's not as physically brutal. Like if you can survive, you can go play. Like we just had a buddy of mine, Muckenhern, him, just got signed to go play in the Dominican again. Like,
oh, I didn't know that actually.
You can make, and that's good money. They pay well in the Dominican for good players, but I do. I think that I think it will be interesting to see how it shakes out over the next couple of years, because these waivers, like we said, and there are a ton of criteria that you have to meet to get one of these waivers passed. So the precedent, I think, Zach, sets more to like this specific intervention for these players that fit this block. But you're right. Now we've kind of like opened up Pandora's box, and we're looking in. We're like, I wonder what else is living in there. What else can we get away with? And it'll be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see like how players like my wife, who was a full ride Division I, if the NCAA will now do like more likeliness stuff, like settlements for past like posthumous players because of rulings that have come down. I mean, not that the NCAA cares. They're worth so much money.
Yeah. So to that point, I think that this whole thing, this entire landscape that we're dealing with is so interesting, because it's a direct result of the NCAA being evil geniuses. Because for years, for decades, college football players have been, basketball players too, for that matter, been, hey, NCAA, you know how we do this thing that everybody loves watching on TV, and you guys make billions of dollars per year in revenue from people wanting to watch us do this thing. If we didn't do this thing, you wouldn't make any of that money. Don't you think you should pay us some of that money for doing the thing? And the NCAA is like, no,
you child.
No, you get an education, you get a scholarship, right?
Listen here,
and the guys are like, yeah, but like, that's worth $200,000 at most, and you made $3 billion last year. Also, that isn't actually you spending money. That's the school, quote unquote, spending money, which they're not, by the way. They're just waiving a fee. Not the same.
And then this is subsidized on the back end by the government. Mm-hmm. So. And
they have endowments. The Duke University could run their school indefinitely, for free. Mm-hmm. Their endowment is so big. If you want to blow your freaking mind, here, we're gonna go on a tangent. Let me put a pin on this NCAA thought. This tangent is insane. So I was looking this up recently. Largest college endowments. Google search. So Harvard, $49.5 billion.
With a B. That's insanity.
And just to be clear, so if anybody listening does not know what an endowment is a fund. Think of it almost like a pension fund at like a company. This is a fund of money that they are sitting on, that they have invested somewhere, and it's an insurance policy or their funds to run the school or what have you, whatever they may or may not need money for. This is cash on their balance sheet. Think of it that way. So, and it's called an endowment because a lot of it comes from donors, and so when you donate money, it goes into the endowment fund, but then they invest it places. Yes, Alex.
I'm going to provide some context as well. Thank you. So when I was at UND, we after the year after I got done, the program got cut. We were trying to figure out what the endowment would be if we were to like raise enough money that the endowment for the baseball program, it could run for like 5 to 7 years without any additional fees. $1 million could have ran our program for like, I think it was like the stat was like just over 3.5 years, or at the term of a college player, so 4 years. So $1 million could sustain one team for 4 years. They said that in a perpetuity, like in perpetuity, if we could raise 5 point something, you'd never have to fund the baseball team again. It could be ran just as it is. So that's some scope to $50 billion.
Yeah. And so we've got the Ivy Leagues. Now, this is a shock. I'll have the biggest. You've got Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton, MIT, Penn. They are all north of $20 billion. That's the top 6. Notre Dame is 16 billion. Duke is 13 billion. So just to illustrate this here, the University of Denver is let's see here. The University of Denver is the 134th biggest endowment, and they have a $1.02 billion endowment.
That's so
how about this? Have you ever heard of? Oh, here's one. This is fun. Carleton College, Minnesota.
We know who those guys are. Yeah.
1.1 billion.
What?
You ever?
For who? Yeah. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
You ever heard of Rochester Institute of Technology?
I have actually.
No? Oh, well, I haven't. 1.2 billion. How about, let's go back up to like the 50th. How about Pomona College in California? 2.7 billion. So
I want you to guess how many people are enrolled at Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, that has $1.1 billion endowment. Go ahead and guess.
Undergrad?
Yeah,
undergrads. 3,000. I think it's probably about between 2,000 and 6,000. 2,000. Yeah, it's a
2,069. 1.1 billion. They could give away they could literally, they'd never have to charge a cent ever again if they didn't want to.
They do not need to charge tuition.
Can you buy dividend stock in universities? Can you get a kickback?
Dude, I'm telling you right now, higher education is like the biggest monster business hiding in plain sight. These universities are making money hand over fist, and they get it from both ends. They're tax exempt because they run their education institutes. They run as like nonprofits, so they're tax exempt. They get donations, they get tuition, they get fees, they get all this stuff. And then you get athletic departments. They're like, oh, we don't have money to pay an assistant coach $20,000. Oh, it costs us so much to give you your scholarship. Oh,
but they're paying their president 1.6 billion or 1.6 million a year to sit at all these. He's just a figurehead. Yeah. So this, to that point, when I was in graduate school, our tuition went up 13% in 3 years, and no one. They just, what do? You can't be like, no, you have to pay it. Like if you want the degree, you have to pay it, which is the worst.
Not. It's like a weird thing where it's free market because there's so many colleges, but
it's also federally subsidized.
It's like an oligarchy of a free market. It's a really weird, and I'm of the opinion that something has to give here. I think that people are going to stop valuing college as highly as they do. I think you're going to see a resurgence of trades. A lot of the young men that I coach, and granted, I'm around a very specific niche genre of young man, but still a lot of them are saying I want to go to trade school. I want to become a welder. I don't want to go and get a fake email job. I don't want to spend all that money. I don't have all that debt, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so you see people are getting kind of disillusioned to all of this, right? I'm by the way, while I'm talking, I'm scrolling on this list. There are so many colleges on here with over $1 billion endowments that I've never even heard of.
How many universities? How many?
Oberlin College in Ohio, 1.2 billion. Never heard of it. Brandeis University in Massachusetts, 1.2 billion. Never heard of it. Vassar College, 1.2 billion. Never heard of it. Princeton Theological Seminary, $1.4 billion endowment. A pastor's school.
Mm-hmm.
Holy moly.
I want you to guess how many. Let's see. There are more than 1,800 private, non-profit college and universities in the United States. Private. There are 365 Division I schools. That's insane.
Yeah,
There are 3,982 secondary degree granting institutions in the United States.
Yeah.
Almost 4,000.
Oh, that list I was looking at was only the private universities. I just realized that. Holy shit. Oh my God. Okay, so now you've got University of Texas, 44 billion. Texas A&M, 19 billion. University of Michigan, 17 billion. University of Virginia, 9 billion. Ohio State, 7.3 billion, lower than I would have expected. University of Minnesota, 5.5 billion.
Okay, I want you to guess. So when you do the math, guess how many colleges or secondary education centers there are per state?
On average?
80. There are almost 80.
I was going to guess like 100. Yeah.
Are we talking big business or are we talking McDonald's? There's one on every fucking corner.
Yeah,
and all of them are making money.
Yeah, there legitimately is like one on every corner. It's crazy. So all of that is sort of a tangent to the NCAA point. So the NCAA was making all this money from the TV contracts, March Madness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Players were like, hey, can we get some of that? And they were like, nah.
Yeah.
But the schools, they could give you money, and they have got look at how much money they have. And the schools are like, dude, shut up. Like, no, they don't need to know that. And so then they both got together and they were like, all right, so we should let the kids make money, but we don't want to give them any of our money. Let's just let them get money from whoever. Right. And so now everybody's happy because the kids can get money. So the kids are getting their money either way. They don't give a shit. But the problem, like the evil genius of this is that neither party had to like concede anything. The schools and the NCAA didn't have to give up a penny of any of the money they're making. And now they just have boosters, donors, businesses, private entities paying these players, funding these things. Right? Programs are going out and like college football programs are going out and like raising NIL funds, sort of like their own individual endowments, but they're all raised. It's not coming from the school. It's coming from donors, and they're building their own internal infrastructure to this, right? There was a
football programs are going to have endowments now. Like it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
There's going to be this.
There was a news story. Yeah, there was a news story that broke. I think it was Michael Vick getting a head coaching job in an HBCU.
Yeah.
And they had something like a $44 million NIL fund that was like pledged, but it was like contingent upon them getting a certain like recruiting class ranking or something. And all the people were like, if you get these recruits, we'll pay for it. So they've got all this money that's like pledged contingent upon whatever, but it's all coming from donors. It's not coming from the school, and it's also not coming from the NCAA. So
where does all this money come from? Like, where does it come from? How?
This is America, man. There is so much money moving around and changing hands every day. I think that I'm going to get a little political. All right. So this is my biggest pet peeve about the like loser liberal person that hates rich people, as if all rich people were just born into it. Mm-hmm. There is so much money in the world. Go get you some. It is there for the taking. It is go provide something to society that people want, and they will give you their dollars.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is everybody gets like, oh my God, these people, they're rich people. They're just giving it to football players. What did you do all day Saturday? Did you watch football all day Saturday?
Yeah.
If you watched football, then you should be thanking those people because they're funding that thing you love.
Mhm.
It's insane. It's just like people who bitch about. There's this chart circulating on Twitter, and it's a perfect intelligence test based on their reaction to this chart. It's like the top 10 richest people in America,
Oh,
and
yeah.
somebody tweeted, and they're like, if you want to know where all the GDP is in the United States, here it is, or whatever. And people are like, oh my God, these people they're hoarding all the money. These 10 people that own publicly traded companies.
Yeah.
So the value of their stock is that much. They don't have that much money in their bank account, you idiots. They also provide, the reason they have all that value is because they provided
jobs.
something. They're like, everybody's like, oh, we should tax billionaires at 90%. That's your employer, you idiot. If he has to pay 90% taxes, guess what? You're laid off. He can't afford you anymore.
Yeah.
Like what? How do you think this works?
Yeah.
This money, but there's so many billions and billions of dollars moving around from place to place every day, and people love sports. They will spend money on sports, just like the guy who's the head of the pipe fitters union in Pittsburgh spends a huge amount of money on his season tickets for the Steelers. These people who own a private equity fund, they love their college too. They love their NFL team too. They're going to spend an immense amount of money on it. And it's going to the players because the players are the thing that provide the value. Mm-hmm. And the big organizations, the quote unquote nonprofits, the schools in the NCAA got away with murder here. They got away
and they'll continue to. So like if we're gonna go down that path, it's like it's the notion of that providing free education is like an important thing, right? When realistically, when you go to a college, you're just checking a box. Like you're just proving to somebody that you can show up to something for 4 years. Realistically, that's what most employers are looking for, right? So if we're going to subsidize that, then we're just feeding the machine even more. Like we are dumping more poison into the pit that is the McDonald's addicted, like just ick. Like you're perpetuating the cycle so much more, right? So it's like the federal subsidy doesn't just come from because the government's printing money. The federal subsidy comes from the fact that these people, like we just talked about, that are worth billions and trillions of dollars, are providing this huge infrastructure because they built it. This is what they've done, right? And they've played the game, and that's how it works. Now, you can bitch and moan all you want about that. If you want to go live somewhere else where there's a caste system and you can't rise any further because your father or your mom or whatever was this for their job, and this is the path you're going to fall in, great. That's great. But the beauty of this country is that you can, like you said, you can go get you some. Like if you hustle and you go out and find a way, like you can provide that opportunity for others. And if that's what you want to do when you have that money, great, do it. But the idea that you need to conform to fall in line, and just because someone doesn't like the way that you want to spend the money that you've earned, tough shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Go walk in the street without a hood on in the rain. Like whatever, you're going to get wet. That's how it works. Like,
yeah, man. And there's so many ways to do it. There's so many, like we have at our Naples location for Max Strength, one of our young clients, he's like a 10-year-old kid. His dad is doing really, really well in business because he founded a beef stick company, and they're really, really wealthy because you know what? People like snacks, and he made something that people wanted, and people are giving him money for it. And that's just that's as simple as it is. Now I'll backtrack. I'm not backtrack, but the other side of this coin, and this is like my most liberal opinion that I have, is that I also think that people who don't want to do that shouldn't have to. I think that, you know how people get on their high horse about like service industry jobs? Yeah. Like working at Starbucks isn't a real career.
It can be.
Why not?
Yeah.
It should be. If I want to do something, and this is exactly the point I'm making. If I want to do something where I'm contributing to society in a meaningful way, I should be able to get rewarded for that, proportional to my contribution and proportional to my ability to like live. If I want to make coffee for a living and I feel good about that, and feel like I'm contributing something to society because that 100 people come in every morning and get their coffee from me, and I smile at them, and I'm contributing to society in that way, I should be able to live on that. That is an inflationary problem. That's a really large scale issue
that's a huge
facing a lot of people. But they're like, oh, it's that's a job for teenagers and this and that. And I don't know, man. I don't really see it that way. I think
Yeah.
the same reason why I believe in entrepreneurship, where like I can go and contribute to society in a meaningful way and I get dollars back for it. I think that I should be able to go and be a barber. I should be able to be a barista. I should be able to be a plumber. I should be able to be a street sweeper and live reasonably comfortably
Mm-hmm.
on that, right? And when I say reasonably comfortably, I guess that depends on your definition of that. But there's so many of these cities that become completely uninhabitable for anybody who isn't a $200,000 a year earner, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem in and of itself too. So like,
I
I don't
totally
know. We
agree.
started talking about
Yeah.
athletic
Yeah.
eligibility, and now I'm
Well,
talking
this
about
it all comes back to that, but like I totally agree. I think that if you're like there, if you have a passion for something and it's what you want to do, there needs to be some type of infrastructure that can support that. Because obviously, like we need people working jobs at all levels. Like we need people to have a passion for what they do. We don't like we have too many cogs in the wheel where they just show up. Like how many of our buddies came out of college and they got paid $65,000 and they just sit in a desk and exist? They breathe.
Yeah.
You know, they're on email strings, but they're not actually doing anything. So why does that job qualify for that? Why does that job qualify for that? Where someone who's busting their ass, being a barista, going somewhere, doing something, serving people, right? Literally serving people, can't make that. They're the one
Yeah.
fucking working. The other dudes are just sitting there breathing that fucking AC air, and they don't even give a shit. They're there. They don't.
And they
care.
don't even do anything. How many people have you talked to throughout the course of your 20s and now your early 30s where they're like, oh man, busy day today. I had so many meetings, and you're like, oh yeah, that does sound busy. And then you talk to them on another day, and you're like, it's Tuesday, and they're like, hey man, you want to play golf? And you're like, what? No man, I'm at work. And he's like, I didn't have any meetings today, so what do you do?
Yeah.
Like, do you just go to meetings? Is that your whole job?
I
And you
had
don't
a
even
buddy
contribute to the meeting. You just sit in them. And it's like,
You're just checking the box.
do you actually have any tasks that you're responsible for? Like, well, I made some decks. Oh, you mean PowerPoints?
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing you did in 8th grade?
Yeah. I mean, I get it because this, once again, you want to talk about another structure that exists. So like the corporate structure, right, is the same idea. So, but there's also tax benefit to having more employees. So this all comes back to the game. Like they're all playing the game. But I 100% agree on all fronts. Like I think that I do think we're either as a country or as a nation, we're moving towards like the necessity for universal basic income. Like I think that's something that may or may not have to come into play to continue to have people working, being able to do these kinds of jobs that, like, if they like doing them, why are we saying no? Like, why are we paying them not enough that they want to be able to live at Starbucks is worth plenty. The shift manager who's been there 3.5 years could probably afford to pay him a little bit more. I don't know how this is all anecdotal, obviously, but I think this comes back to the point that if dudes are going to go to college for this long, you could really use it not only to further your athletic career, but you could put yourself in a really good spot to like come out and do whatever you want. Honestly, like you could start a business while you were in school, getting a degree, working and getting paid to play a sport. You could start a business, or you could find a way to like subsidize buying into something, or like there are so many more options. Think if you could take an NIL deal, and instead of you being like, hey, I want money for this from you, I want stock. I want a part of your company. Like I want to be part of this when I get done. That's my price. Yeah. Like that would be, you want to talk about working smart?
Yep.
Oh,
especially at like the mid-major high academic schools, such as Stanford, such as Yale or Harvard. Like these, they have college baseball teams. They have college football teams. They have, it would be a really interesting thing to go and say, I'm going to invest in you, but not really as an athlete. I'm investing in you because you're an athlete and I like the intangibles that requires, but I want to get on board with you because you're a bright young man woman who has a future ahead of them, and you're going to spend 2 extra years in school now because of this eligibility thing. So you're going to come out of this with an MBA. I want a slice of whatever you're doing. I'm going to be a mentor for you. I'm going to be, all of this opens up new doors for new opportunities and sort of the pay it forward, pay it back cycle for individuals to give back to these young athletes. Because, I mean, there's all these companies out there that are like, we love hiring athletes for these reasons, right? Well, all those same reasons are why athletes make great entrepreneurs, make great business people, make great doctors and lawyers and some of these really like high performing professions. And so This is all like it's a new landscape and it's changing really rapidly. I don't know if I was a high school senior right now, I don't know what I would do differently, but I would take junior college even more seriously. I wish I did junior college, and
Same.
I really wish I did now.
Same. I wish
So
I ever looking back in my career, I should have went to a JUCO just because I
yeah,
developed so much. Like I wasted the first years. Like I was good, but I could have been so much better.
there's two
And
things I should have
and
done.
I
I should have
I
done
wasted money, which
Yeah,
was the dumb
absolutely.
thing.
I should
Yeah.
have done junior college and slash or I should have taken my schoolwork more seriously, like my sophomore year of high school,
Mhm.
because I was perfectly capable of going to one of these Ivy adjacent schools. I wasn't good enough to play at a major Power Four Division One school, but I was good enough to play at a Yale, for example. I could have played at Columbia. I could have. I talent wise, I was there. Uh, and academically I could have handled it, but I didn't take my like classes. I didn't do my homework in high school. I was too busy being cool and like chasing girls and like
Wearing your jeans when you got home from school like a
wearing
freaking
my
nerd.
wearing my jeans and my Air Force Ones. But if I had done like the perfect path for a guy like me would have been JUCO, Ivy League, and that would have really set me up for a life that would have been super high achieving, et cetera, et cetera. Now I kind of quote regret it, but I also don't because like I'm happy about the path I'm on. I know I wouldn't have met my wife, I this and that, all
Yeah.
that, you know. But
Mhm.
I would recommend it's I'm happy that I now get to work with like 15-year-olds and tell them that story and kind of give them that perspective. Like,
Mhm.
do your homework because you're not going to play in the major leagues no matter no matter how much you think you might.
Yeah.
You won't, and
Yeah.
you should set yourself up to make a lot of money some other way.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
agree. I mean, same. I mean, you live. We've now transitioned to the old guys. We're the old dudes in the sessions telling these young guys like, hey, like baseball's important. Like, don't get me wrong, this is important, but at the same time, like you need to be able to do something when you get done with baseball. Like
mhm.
you need to be able because we talk about this all the time at Mac is like your baseball career is a very small part of your life.
Yeah,
Really,
and
your
it's
real life clock starts when your career ends.
yeah, yeah, and it's so hard because in order to excel at anything in baseball, you have to really give your whole self to it.
Mm-hmm.
You you have to be a baseball player. You can't like you can't do it partially. You can't do it halfway. You can't be a guy who plays baseball. You have to be a baseball player. You have to be an athlete all the time. It has to be who you are. And what's really really challenging for people is seeing past that, knowing that that has an expiration date and still being it all the way, but still setting yourself up for the time after the death of that. And it is the death. It's like a lot of guys, this is why people struggle sometimes kind of finding their way is because they're kind of mourning the death of their self, their sense of self that you had to build up this sense of self in order to have any chance of succeeding at the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then
Yeah.
you have to let it die. You have to go and euthanize that self
Mm-hmm.
and be comfortable enough walking away and go through this metamorphosis of a new rebirth into this new self. And you are setting up the groundwork and the building blocks for that new self that's going to come after that metamorphosis during your time in the background.
Yeah.
But you can't let that become, because as soon as I experienced this, I noticed it happening. I remember distinctly a day when I said, this is officially it's over, because I had let the future self sneak in too much. I
Yeah.
was spending more time, energy, mind share on setting myself up for life after baseball than I was on excelling at baseball right then.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened my last year, which is, if it's going to happen, that's the time, I guess. But that was when I sort of like came to terms with like, this is not going to end in 2 months. This is over now. It is. It's done. I've already, you know, I'm a dead man walking,
Mm-hmm.
and I've already made that decision, and that's okay. But that is what it is, right?
Yep.
You die, you're reborn, and it's really hard because you have to like completely walk away from every sense of self you have. And this is why you get that guy that we all kind of hate to run into, whose entire identity is about like the fact that he played college baseball at a D2 school or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's, we all kind of resent that guy because we know how close we were to being that guy.
Could have been you. Yeah.
Could have been me.
Could have been you. Yeah. I mean, I had the same, mine was much more abrupt because I was like potentially going to get like a low level draft and got hurt right at the end. And then I went right into graduate school and it was like, okay, that's it. The decision was made for me. There was never, I didn't have to like pull the plug or anything. So the transition was much, I still didn't go great, but it was quicker. It was very fast. It was like all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm done with that. Yeah. It's like, I still get to play amateur. Yeah. I still get to play amateur baseball, which is fun. And I still get to work with baseball guys. So I still get to be part of the game, but it's more so the fact that I think that we get to help young people. Like we get to help them. It's not about what we are, who we are. It's more so about like where they're headed and what we can do for them and how we can make the best of what we've learned in our time towards them and pass on. Even when I see people at the clinic, same thing, like pass on whatever knowledge whatever I may or may not have learned or whatever's rattling around in my brain that may or may not be worth a thought or two, but at least something, that maybe their parents can't give them or someone else can't give them. And it's like, I think that's the value that you learn from when it ends is that you go, oh, well, that was nice. Okay. Next thing, it's like you just keep the ball moving because it's like you can't go back. You can never go back. And that's like, I think there's a part of that is like the biggest thing in sports is like, that's what you have to learn is like, you can't sit there and wallow in your, in your Cheerios. Like you can't get unhappy and like, be like, oh, if I would have done this and done that. It's like, yeah, great, but you can't go back. Like unless you got the
would have made it if it wasn't for my bum knee.
Yeah, that's right. The time spinner from freaking Harry Potter. You can't go back and go back and Hermione and save the hippogriff. You just can't do it. So for you got to keep moving. You just got to keep the ball rolling because it's really like the opportunities only come if you keep moving. If you lose yourself in what you were or what could have been, then that's what you will be. You'll never grow past what's right in front of your face. Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a good place to wrap.
I dig it.
That was a classic.
We're all over
professional
the place,
amateur episode, all over the place. I'm really glad we got this one out. That's going to be a good one. Hope everybody enjoys it. Thanks a lot,
fun, kids. Bye.
Bye.